Setting up a reliable 12-volt electrical system for a camper van can be overwhelming and expensive, but it doesn't have to be complicated or break the bank. When my friend wanted a budget-friendly electrical system for his camper to travel through Italy, I came up with a solution that meets all his needs without costing a fortune. In this video, I will show you exactly how we did it. We will cover choosing the components, what the system can run, the wire and fuse sizes, and finally, the total cost. Stick around and I'll walk you through each step to make it simple and affordable. And I will also tell you what we ended up with. For our project, we could fit up to 400 watts of solar panels on the roof. So, we decided to use 4 100 watt panels, which was the most cost-effective option. We chose to wire these panels in parallel. This means connecting all the positive terminals together and all the negative terminals together. Why? Because if one panel gets shaded, the other 3 can still produce full power. If you wire them in series, shading one panel would reduce the output of all other panels. I go more in depth on solar panel shading in my book. Next, we need to size the charge controller. How do we figure out which MPPT we need? It's simple. We divide the total solar power by the battery charging voltage. In our case, that's 400 watts divided by 14.4 volts, which equals 28 amps. So we're going to use a 30 amp MPPT charge controller. We also need to check if the charge controller can handle the maximum input voltage. Too much input voltage can damage the controller. Even though you wire the panels in parallel, where the voltage stays the same, it's good to know how this works. We take the open circuit voltage, or VOC, of one panel and multiply it by a safety factor. For our panels, that's 24.5 volts, multiplied by 1.25, which equals 31 volts. This is well below the charge controller's maximum input voltage of 100 volts, so we're good. My friend also wanted to recharge the battery using the van alternator, since he will be driving a lot. For this, we needed a battery-to-battery charger. Why? Because it controls the amount of current going into your battery. Lithium batteries have a low internal resistance, so if the battery is nearly empty, it can draw a lot of current from the alternator. This can damage the alternator and even melt the wires. To avoid overheating, you should only use 30% of your alternator's current. His alternator is rated at 120 amps, so we opted for a 40 amp battery-to-battery charger. I will discuss the wire and fuse sizes we used later in the video. Lastly, for recharging the battery at a campground, we chose a standard lithium battery charger. We picked a 12 volt 20 amp lithium battery charger. Stick around because I will show you the detailed diagram we used to build the system. In this section, we will discuss the battery and inverter. First, the size of the battery depends on what you want to power. My friend made a list of all his devices and how long he plans to use them each day. Let's take a look. A small 12 volt fridge, a laptop, a few lights, a microwave, a USB charger for a phone, and a 12 volt water pump for the sink. I also included the idle consumption of the inverter, which many people overlook. My friend asks, why does the inverter use power even when it's not powering anything? It's because the electronics inside are still running and generating a bit of heat. Anything that generates heat uses power. So to save energy, turn the inverter off when it's not in use. My friend's total daily consumption is about 1800 watt hours. A 12 volt, 100 amp hour lithium battery holds 1280 watt hours. Therefore, we need at least 2 of these batteries to run all the appliances, with 1 day of autonomy. I suggested using a single 12 volt 200 amp hour lithium battery, which provides 2560 watt hours of power. My friend wanted to use lead acid batteries because he thought they were cheaper. But when we compared the options, we found that lithium is actually more cost effective, even just considering the purchase price. He still didn't believe lithium was cheaper, so I pointed him to my video comparing lead acid and lithium batteries for a deeper understanding. We will add the cost of the battery to our total system cost, which I will show you at the end of the video. Next, we need to size the inverter. It must handle the surge power from the microwave. I recommend a 2000 watt Guidel inverter, which is budget friendly. If you don't have a microwave, you can use a smaller inverter. I've used a 600 watt version and recently made a review video about it. If you're finding the video interesting so far, give the channel a sub. We're almost at 50,000. Now, let's take a look at the wiring diagram. Don't be overwhelmed. I will explain each step clearly. All the cables we use are welding cables, rated for 105 degrees insulation temperature. If you choose different cables than the ones I mention, you will need to use larger ones. I also have a dedicated video on sizing cables and fuses, so if you are confused, give it a look. Let's start with the solar panels. We're wiring them in parallel, which means connecting all the positive terminals together and all the negative terminals together. The distance from the roof to the charge controller is 15 feet, or 4.5 meters. Why do we calculate voltage drop? Over long distances, wires can lose voltage. To prevent this, we increase the thickness of the wire. By wiring the panels in parallel, we minimize shading issues and keep the voltage at 20.2 VMP. The maximum current in the wire will be 20.8 amps. For this, we will use a 10 gauge or 4 mm square PV cable, which keeps the voltage drop below the recommended 3%. We also need a DC breaker before the charge controller to isolate the panels for maintenance. A 32 amp DC breaker should be placed conveniently near the charge controller. Next, let's calculate the wire required from the charge controller to the bus bar. The controller outputs 30 amps, and with a safety factor of 1.25, that becomes 38 amps. We will use an 8 gauge or 10 mm square welding cable, which can handle 55 amps. For safety, we will fuse it with a 50 amp MIDI fuse. We'll be using a fuse block, where your MIDI fuses will fit in. Now, let's move on to the alternator charger. To minimize voltage drop, place your household battery as close to the alternator as possible, ideally behind the driver's seat. You will need to run a cable from the starter battery to the input of the DC to DC charger, and another cable from the charger to the bus bar. Assuming the distance from the starter battery is 15 feet or 4.5 meters, and the charger outputs 40 amps at 90% efficiency, we need to account for 44.4 amps being drawn on the input side. Using our voltage drop calculation, a 4 gauge cable will keep the voltage drop below 3%. A 4 gauge or 25 mm square welding cable can handle up to 150 amps. I suggest using a 60 amp marine rated battery fuse on the starter battery if you have space. Otherwise, use a MIDI fuse. The cable between the B2B charger and the bus bar can be the same 4 gauge cable, with a 60 amp MIDI fuse. The charging needs to be activated by a switch. Add a small switch to the input terminals with a 12 volt source. Use a ring terminal. When the switch is turned on and the device receives voltage, it will start charging. The charger stops drawing power from the starter battery if the voltage gets too low. However, I recommend only charging when the car is running. And remember, using the alternator to charge the battery will increase your vehicle's fuel consumption. If you enjoyed this video so far, please give the video a like, so I'll make more of these videos. Our last charging option is shore power, using a lithium battery charger. The maximum charging current is 20 amps. To add a safety margin, we multiply by 1.25, which gives us 25 amps. We will use a 30 amp MIDI fuse and an 8 gauge or 10 mm square welding cable that can handle 55 amps. Next, we need to calculate the cable from the inverter to the battery. a 2000 watt inverter at 12 volts, draws 167 amps. Since the inverter operates at 90% efficiency, the input power will be higher. To find this, we divide 167 amps by 0.9, resulting in 185 amps. Adding a safety factor of 1.25, we get 230 amps. We will use a 1/0 or 50mm square welding cable, which can carry 285 amps. And we will use a 250 amp fuse. I recommend using an MRBF fuse on the battery terminals. It's a great way to save on fuse holders. MRBF stands for Marine Rated Battery Fuse. My friend wants to run a few 12V appliances through a fuse box. This fuse box can handle up to 100 amps, but he will be only using a maximum of 30 amps, more than enough to run the DC pump, a few lights, the fridge and a USB charger. Using a safety factor, 30 amps becomes 38 amps. We will use an 8 gauge or 10mm square welding cable, which can carry 55 amps, and a 50 amp MIDI fuse. We forgot one important cable, the one from the busbar to the battery. For safety, we need to add up all the charging sources to find the maximum current through this wire. Combining the 30 amp from the charge controller, 40 amps from the alternator charger, and 20 amps from short charging, we get 90 amps. Applying the safety factor of 1.25, we get 113 amps. The cable that can carry this current is a 6 gauge cable, which is rated at 115 amps. The next step would be to find the fuse in between 113 and 115 amps, but we cannot find a fuse to fit in between. So we have to increase the cable size to 4 gauge or 25mm square. This cable can carry a maximum of 150 amps. Now we can size a fuse in between 113 amps and 150 amps. A 125 amp fuse is perfect. This will be a marine rated battery fuse as well. Let's quickly go over the cost to build this 12V electrical system. 400 watts of solar panels, $220. PV cable, $35. Charge controller, $90. Battery to battery charger, $170. Battery charger, $110. Inverter, $160. Battery, $500. Fuse box, $15. DC breaker, $20. Bus bars, $50. Fuses, $200. Cables, $300. The total cost of the system is about $2,000. You can save money by choosing a single charging method. For example, only charging by alternator would save you $850. That's what my friend ended up doing. He didn't install solar and shore charging, solely relying on alternator charging and a smaller inverter. You can see the system being installed in this image. So you can get a basic system with only alternator charging for $1,150. The next question my friend had was, how long will it take to recharge the battery using different charging methods? So I decided to break it down. First, we looked at solar power. With 400 watts of panels on the roof and an average of 6 sun hours per day in southern Italy during August, we needed to account for a 30 amp efficiency loss due to the flat panel positioning. This means we can expect 1680 watt hours per day. Our battery has a capacity of 2560 watt hours, so it would take 1.5 days to recharge from 0 to 100%. Next, we considered charging with the alternator while driving. The alternator can deliver 40 amps at 14.6 volts, which equals 584 watts. To recharge our battery, it would take 4.5 hours of driving. Lastly, we looked at using shore power at the campground. The shore charger can deliver 20 amps at 14.6 volts. providing 292 watts. To recharge the battery from 0 to 100%, it would take 9 hours. This is perfect, since my friend would be spending the night at the campground anyway. If you find this diagram helpful and would like more, check out the link in the description. You can get free solar diagrams delivered straight to your inbox. Thank you for tuning in. You can watch this playlist next, and I will see you in the next one.